Hey guys, welcome back, and if you're new here, I'm Vic, a rising senior at Yale University. Now, even though I don't speak too much about Yale in my other videos, the past 3 years that I've spent here have been perhaps the best in my life in terms of personal growth and really just learning how to take care of myself. But it didn't always start out that way. My first year at Yale was actually kind of mediocre, and it took me a while to really come into my own, and so that's the experience that I want to share with you guys today. Definitely stick around to the end because I definitely think I have some things to say that are relevant to anyone who's watching this, regardless of whether you are applying to Yale, to college, already are in college, or have graduated already. Without further ado, let's get to it and grab a snack because this is going to be a long video. So I'm sure it wouldn't surprise any of you for me to say that Yale was my dream school. I had spent 7 months writing my common application essays, and I remember the entire year leading up to when I finally applied, and I had done so much research on Yale. I had read every news article, watched every video, anything on Yale. I probably would have already consumed that content. So I felt like I knew Yale inside out to the extent that I almost felt like I was already on campus. Another thing that I remember very clearly is that when I was researching online for some of the cons of Yale, like the negative parts of Yale, I overwhelmingly heard great things about the school. I couldn't find anyone online who would say bad things about Yale, and so when I finally got in, obviously I was ecstatic, but it also meant that going into Yale, I had certain expectations of what my experience is going to be like. I had painted this image of Yale in my head, of this amazing, perfect institution. So here were some of my main expectations. First of all, obviously, I expected top-notch academic instruction. I don't think I need to add any further explanation. I mean, it's Yale, you expect a stellar academic experience. Number 2, I had very, very high hopes for the residential college system, which is one of the biggest reasons why I applied to Yale. And for those of you who are not familiar, the residential college system is basically any applicant who gets into Yale is randomly sorted into one of 14 residential colleges, and each residential college is advertised to be a microcosm of the student body. You live with people with many different interests, and each college also has its residential college dean and head, which are basically 2 staff members, 2 professors who are there to not only plan student events and make sure that the residential college community is very bonded, but also provide any academic guidance if you need it. Residential colleges also have their own facilities, like their own dining hall, their own dorms, their own library, etc. And they also have their own traditions. So residential college life is a huge part of Yale life. So for me, I was so sure that this residential college system would mean that from the beginning, I would have a community to call my own, and that I would be super close to my dean and my head, and just overall really feel connected to my college. And the final expectation I had going into Yale is something that's difficult to put into words because I don't think it was necessarily a specific thing that I was looking for, but the feeling that Yale is the place for me and that I was growing and becoming a better version of myself. I regarded Yale through this veneer of awe that I think a lot of people attribute to getting into the Ivy Leagues, right? There are these untouchable institutions that all the amazing famous people go to, and the opportunity to go there to study is a once in a lifetime experience. So I think going into Yale, I also had this expectation to be wowed, to be amazed by what I experienced. Now looking back, I realized that Yale did fall short in many ways of the expectations and the perfect picture I had painted of it in my head. And here's why. First of all, I was put into a residential college that I didn't love. I never got close to the other people in my community, and I'm not sure up to this day whether it's because I just didn't put enough effort into it, whether I'm an international student and so it's more difficult for me to connect with people, or perhaps because people always seem to hang out in cliques in my residential college and it was difficult to make friends after the first couple of weeks. But I never really got to feel that sense of community that I was really looking for. And don't get me wrong, there are many Yale students who absolutely love their residential college community and have their closest friends in their residential college, but it wasn't like that for me. And I for a fact know that a lot of my friends are the same as me, like we have our good friends in other colleges. Secondly, I actually didn't love my academic experience in my first year. And this was a surprise for me because, as I said earlier, I was expecting this stellar intellectual academic experience. Now this I think is in part attributed to the fact that, when you first get into college, you're getting used to the system of picking classes, you're getting used to shopping period and things like that. And it could also be because of the fact that I was trying to fulfill some requirements which are usually more boring classes. But overall, I wasn't very wowed by my academic experience. A lot of my classes were very lackluster. My teachers, my professors weren't amazing. I wasn't necessarily awed by my class curriculum or content. And I remember very vividly thinking one day in the first semester, is this what I came to Yale for, to study these things? And go to my classes not feeling excited? Because to me, going to college is about learning to fall in love with learning again. Like being able to take classes that sound interesting just because of it. Like that was the thing that I was looking forward to so much before going to university. And when I went to Yale that first year and feeling almost underwhelmed by my classes, this was another unexpected thing that led to my sense of disappointment in Yale for that first year. And finally, my non-academic life was also really lackluster as well, which was doubly disappointing because if you can't find fulfillment in your academics, then at least try to find fulfillment in your extracurricular activities, right? But no. If you've watched a couple of my previous videos, you would know now I'm very involved in the environmental community, but 2 years ago when I was a freshman, the clubs that I'm in right now didn't even exist. And so I actually felt very alone. I didn't feel that I had friends who had the same interests as me. Also, I didn't push myself to try new things and to have new experiences in my first year. I was in a relationship and I was spending a lot of time with this other person instead of pushing myself to go out for events and try new things and meet new people. I know I'm not giving you guys a lot of details, but that's because I genuinely do not remember very much that happened in my first year at Yale. And the reason why this is the case is because I was not pushing myself to make memories that mattered to me. Everything just started to blend together and I felt disappointed because I was like, did I come to Yale for this experience, for this mediocre, lackluster experience? And let me clarify something. I did not hate my freshman year. I still woke up every day very grateful that I was at Yale, I was at this institution. But at the same time, I felt like every single day was the same thing. I was falling into routines in a bad way. So it wasn't a bad year, but it wasn't a great one either. I mean, it was exactly that. It was unremarkable. So summer was when everything started to change because I think a couple of things happened that made me realize I had to start taking control of my life and I had to start being the crafter of my own reality. So there were two main experiences in the summer of my freshman year that really changed the trajectory of my next 2 years at Yale. The first thing was the internship that I did in California. California was such a formative experience to me for several reasons. First of all, I was working in a creative role, so we weren't working in an office, but in a very small team. It was very creative work, very spontaneous. Every day we were doing something different. Even though I didn't necessarily learn a lot of new skills, I found it very creatively and intellectually fulfilling, and that was a very nice breath of fresh air from the staleness of my life at Yale. More importantly, however, that was the time that I was going through a breakup, and honestly, being in California where I was the best place I could have possibly healed because I was living in a house in the middle of the woods and we were so close to the sea and the beaches. At the same time, we were just as close to the redwood forests. And so every weekend we would go on these hikes to all these beautiful natural spaces. And it was so spiritually healing for me. I remember very clearly there was also a period of time in the summer when I was living on my own. That was the time I think I really learned how to love being on my own. I really learned how to take care of myself when I was feeling really, really down. That was the time when I deleted Instagram, when I found the first personal development YouTubers that I still follow to this day, that I started to inculcate rituals of self-care and journaling daily and doing yoga every single day. Like these systems and habits of taking care of myself and learning how to function optimally as a human being, I carry it with me into my next 2 years at Yale and I still do them today. So that was California. Now, the second formative experience that I had in the summer of my freshman year was the opportunity to go to the Arctic. as part of an expedition. Now, this expedition to the Arctic was formative in a different way. That was so pivotal for me because it was that experience that really exposed me to issues like Indigenous rights and other topics that are scary to talk about, like colonialism and injustice and marginalized communities and environmental justice. These are things I was completely unfamiliar with before going on the expedition. I actually thought that we were going to be learning a lot more environmentally focused things, but there were a lot of Indigenous elders, Inuit elders, as well as First Nations who were on the ship along with us. And these people would come together and share their experiences about, for example, the after effects of colonialism or the effects of climate change on their communities. And this trip really awakened me to this idea of inequality in the world in a very tangible sense. So because of that, when I went back into Yale, I started to explore this whole field of environmental justice, social justice by taking ethnicity, race, and migration classes. And I didn't even realize that this trip has such a big impact on my future academic trajectory and my future career interests until I was putting together my concentration for my major this year. I ended up taking enough social justice related courses that I was able to concentrate in environmental justice. And I think these two summer experiences really epitomized how much learning really happens outside the classroom. Academic institutions like Yale can only do so much, but being able to go out into the real world, whether it's in the form of doing an internship or speaking to communities on the ground, people on the ground who have lived experiences in whatever area they are interested in, those things are valuable, if not even more so than just studying something in a classroom, even at a world-class institution like Yale. So I think my freshman summer was really a summer of growing in my own way, of realizing that, hey, you don't need to be at Yale to have massive paradigm shifts in the way that you look at the world. So sophomore year was completely different. Sophomore year, everything kind of turned around. That was the year when my personal growth journey really kind of skyrocketed. That was the year I co-founded 2 clubs, the year I discovered my love for learning languages, the year of my first ever solo trip, the year of writing bucket lists and making it a point to tick them off, the year of building stronger friendships, the year of just learning how to truly live. Yeah, so sophomore year was really the year that I think I grew into my own at Yale. Which is not to say I have everything figured out, because I definitely don't, I still don't. But so much happened in sophomore year that I can remember to this day, because I really made sure that sophomore year would be a year to remember, and it sure ended up being that way. So I wanted to share my disappointing and forgettable first year at university, because I want more people to realize that it doesn't matter where you go to school, whether you go to your dream Ivy League college or a safety school, or you decide that you don't even want to go to college. If you can't take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you, or if there are not any apparently available, then crafting your own, then you're never going to be able to live out your life to its fullest potential. If I had continued to live the way I did in my freshman year, which is to say, not actively seeking new experiences or trying challenging classes, I think I would still feel disappointed in my year experience today. Looking back at my past 3 years, I'm very happy with how everything turned out, but I think that's because I decided to take a step back in my freshman summer, really take stock of how I was feeling, and decide to change the things I didn't like about my life. If you take away anything from this video, it is this: you are the author of your own life story. You need to be responsible for your own life because no one else is going to do it for you. I have so many high school students commenting on my Yale admissions videos saying that there are no clubs in their school that they like, or that they go to average schools, or they don't know how to stand out. And to these people, I always say the same things. You can either settle for the reality that you have and you're living right now, or you can go out there and find more opportunities. There are so many creative and free ways to become better as a person, to find new projects to get involved with. There's no point in comparing what you have or the opportunities that you have with anyone else, because that's not going to get you any further in life. And that's not to say privilege doesn't exist, because it certainly does. I totally agree that oftentimes opportunity and resources will go towards those with privilege, and that is not fair at all. But there's always going to be people who are more privileged than you, and there's always going to be people who are less. We cannot control the cards that we are dealt with at birth, but we can decide how we want to play them. Our life circumstances and the family we are born into, for example, might set the stage, but we are not bound to a fixed role for life. And I think I feel very strongly about this life is yours for the crafting mentality because it is something that I had to learn myself as well. For example, my high school didn't have a lot of the academic and enrichment programs that other schools had. A lot of schools have this thing called humanities program, or some of them have equal literacy program, opportunities to go overseas to do enrichment programs, but I never got exposure to that, and instead all of the opportunities and things that I found to put on my Common app, I had to go out and look for them on my own. I had to find them on the internet and actively seek them out on my own. And a lot of the times when I would meet people my age at these events, I would ask them, how did you find out about this? And they said, oh, our school told us. But my school never really shared those things with us. Also, I wanted to share this story because I want more high school students to stop idolizing top tier universities like Yale. I get so many messages from high school students telling me that, oh my god, Yale is my dream school, blah blah blah, and I don't blame you because that was me as well at one point. But I'm so afraid that these students think that you can only have a fulfilling undergraduate life, you can only become somebody if you go to Yale, and that is completely not true. I 100% acknowledge that a place like Yale definitely does have access to more resources, more opportunity. It does come with the brand name and reputation, which is a very valuable asset to have. But there's so many people who've made it big without having an Ivy League degree, or in fact, so many people who've made it big without even going to college. So I hope you take away that the school that you go to does not define you. This is especially for all those high school students watching. You can do amazing things even if you don't go to Yale. If you guys would like to hear a little bit more about my second and third year at Yale University, let me know in the comments, because I feel like every single year I've spent at Yale has taught me new lessons that have really helped me grow as a person, and I would love to share that with you if you would be interested. If you are a high school student who's applying to Yale, I've also done a couple of videos on application tips and me sharing my essays and stuff that I'm going to put on the screen right now. If you enjoyed this video, definitely stick around because I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about my Yale experiences in the future as well. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys real soon. Bye!